Hello there.
We've got a great show lined up for you.
You're listening to Delay of Game.
You gotta be kidding me!
I like the look.
Well, I don't get brain man comb.
The Sports Talk Podcast.
I like the look.
Gonna get some cold cuts today.
With Ryan Swanigan.
We're gonna sound like fools here. It's time to grab the knife and the fork and start digging into the steak.
And
Devon Kleich.
I like to be on the radio in the dark. Hockey doesn't get a lot of exposure on this show, so I wanted to throw it out there.
I like the look.
I mean, the sex appeal, I think, would just be off the chain.
Yeah!
Welcome in. That's right. It is another video podcast, and this gentleman right over here, you know who this is too. It is the great Devon Kleich. He is back. Welcome back to the program, my good friend.
Appreciate it, man. It's good to be back. Good to be back talking some sports.
Oh, yeah, I know. That's awesome. This is all awesome. I am so glad for Zoom. Doug Lowry was very insistent. Both of you two were the first people to text me and be like, Delay of Game's coming back anytime you want me on. I'm like, well, congratulations. You guys are the first two guests. So,
yep, I was more than happy to come back and do this.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So much to discuss, so much to catch up on. Devon Kleich, of course, former contributor for the program, much like Doug Lowry. So the first thing that we want to discuss and learn about here is the journey that has been Devon Kleich's life post Delay of Game. And I want you to start with after you graduated. I know we had you on the podcast from 2015 and 2016, the first year of Mike Riley. We'll get into that way later. But talk about everything that kind of went down for you job-wise, because you've had a very fascinating career since you graduated from UNL.
Yeah, it kind of hasn't gone down the road I originally thought I was going to. But as everyone knows that followed us while we were in school, was that I worked for the football team in the video department as a student. So we shot, your practices, your games, all that stuff. And when it came down to it, they asked me if I wanted to continue this as a career. And I said, absolutely not. I just, wanted to be a part of football. Grew up loving Nebraska football. And, got to the end of my college career and realized maybe I didn't want to go into television. Interviewed for a job or two. When I graduated in December of 2015, I interviewed at a local station in Lincoln. After that interview, I realized I did not want to do that. And
didn't want to join my ranks.
Didn't want to. So I stayed and helped out the football program for the spring semester, trained new kids coming into the program, helped those guys out. And when this was March of 2016, I had heard about a job with the Minnesota Vikings, interning with them and doing video. And I was like, okay, maybe I'll give this a shot, because working in the NFL, it's got to be a dream,
Oh, yeah.
And, didn't grow up a Vikings fan, but it was close enough to home that I could still be around my family as much as possible. And when let's put it this way. The way it worked out was we had a coaches clinic at Nebraska in that spring of 2016. And Mike Riley had Norv Turner and Scott Turner, who Norv was the offensive coordinator at the time at the Vikings, and his son was the quarterback's coach. Well, they came down for our coaches clinic, and I'd interviewed for the job, I think once or twice already. And they came down, and I spoke with Scott Turner for about maybe a combined 30 seconds. And we literally talked nothing about football. It was literally, hey, my name's Devon. And it was around my birthday at that time. So somehow that came up in the conversation. He's like, oh, you and my son share the same birthday. And when he left, I was like, okay, hopefully he passes this along and I get hired there. Not even 2 hours later, hired at the Minnesota Vikings. So I don't know if that was as a result of speaking with him. I'm sure it probably was. But I attribute to him helping me get that job there, as well as my boss at Nebraska at the time. And when we got into to the end of spring ball, I had left Nebraska and went.
It left me. You left me.
I did. Me and Ryan actually roomed together.
That's right.
For my last semester and then the spring semester, which I was out of school. And so I moved back home for like 2 days to Iowa. And then my parents helped me move to Minneapolis May 2nd. Just after the draft, I'd started working there and had been there for a full year. That was the first year of US Bank Stadium. The Vikings moved in after playing at the Gophers stadium for the last 3 or so years. So that was a fun experience to get to open a new stadium, get to shoot there. Actually, this, I don't know if you can see it real well, but this is the very first kickoff of the Minnesota Vikings.
Oh, wow.
They gave this to us, and this was against the Packers in week 2. And there's this giant scoreboard over here, and you can barely see me, but I'm on top of that scoreboard filming.
Great.
So I have that. And then I didn't really know what I was going to do after that season was over with. And it just happened to, in January, job at the University of Kansas came open, and which was also close to home. It's about 4.5 hours the other direction. And I literally applied for it, or reached out to the video guy, and he called me literally the next day, set up a Skype interview. So this was like Wednesday of that week, and this is at the end of January. Wednesday, did the Skype interview. Thursday, got hired. Friday, left the Vikings. Saturday was down in Lawrence, Kansas. And the reason I did it so quickly was that week following was National Signing Day. And so they wanted me to be there for a signing day to help out with whatever. So I was down there quick, moved in, got a place, and was there for 4 short months.
I was going to say, I remember this because I was, of course, there for the Vikings hiring when you told me that, and that was going on. And then I had forgotten, but now I'm remembering the whole Kansas, the Kansas excursion as it ended up being.
And I love Lawrence, Kansas. It was a great place to work. But it just happened to work out. I wasn't full-time there. Even though I worked full-time hours, which is kind of how it is when you start out. But I worked from the end of January to June. So in May, we had our video conference that we have every year. And that year it happened to be in Atlanta. Well, I had met the video guy at Miami, and him and my boss, very good friends. And we happened to golf while we were there, and I got paired with him. And when I got paired with him, we just, a casual conversation the entire time we were golfing. And it's funny because he called me Devon. That's what he thought. And because my name is spelled Devon, he thought that because my boss at Kansas called me Devon, which it didn't bother me, but he did, he knew my actual name. So he just kept calling me Devon. Well, throughout that process, like a week after we got back to Lawrence, he called me, and my boss called me and he goes, hey, the Miami video coordinator wants to interview you for his assistant job. And I had never planned on leaving Kansas that quickly.
Yeah.
Great opportunity. You're going to make quite a bit of money. He goes, I would take it. So I took it. And I think I moved down there in July of 2017. So at this point, in less than a year, I basically moved from Lincoln to Minneapolis to Lawrence to Miami.
Yes.
all over the place. But
What a ride.
and when I got to Miami, hit the ground running. It was Mark Rick's second year there. Coach Rick was an awesome guy to work for. Spent 2 years there. I think I just got over 2 years there. For the 2017-2018 season. And my first year there, we won 10 games, played in the ACC championship game, lost, and then we lost to Wisconsin in the Orange Bowl. And then the next year, we played in the Pinstripe Bowl, lost to Wisconsin again in the Pinstripe Bowl.
That was your trip to Yankee Stadium.
Yep, and my career record versus Wisconsin is not good. I don't think
Yes, that's right.
I don't think we've ever beaten them since I've worked in football. So
Oh, that's terrible.
But it just happened to work out. I had looked at a few jobs, had been offered a few jobs to be a head video guy now, which is what I wanted to do. I wanted to take the next step and run my own video department. And I got to literally so we played in week 0 of 2019, so last season, because our game got moved up because it was Miami, Florida, in Orlando, week 0.
Oh, yeah.
So we played that game, and I actually had a guy reach out to me about a job at UAB, which is where I currently am. So this is very unusual because you don't usually do this, but I was working at Miami week 0, had week 1 off because we didn't play. And I went and interviewed that week, that Wednesday night into Thursday morning, interviewed for the UAB head video job because their guy had left.
Mm-hmm.
And they had offered me the job before I even left.
Ha! Wow.
So I flew back to Miami on Thursday morning, and I get back to the office. I go right into work after I get to the airport, go into work. And I'm like, hey, they offered me a job. I'm going to take it. And he's like, congrats. He's like, pack your stuff up and get out of here. And I drove 12 hours north, all the way up through Florida, up through the Panhandle, and then up through Alabama to get to Birmingham. And I was working week 2, head video guy.
Wow.
Week 2, and our first game that I worked was Akron. So we're on the road going to Akron, which is not a situation you want to be in. But thankfully, I had a good group of students that actually did my entire job week 1, which is unbelievable to think that your students could do that. But they were so good that they did. And I got through that first week, and it was almost a breeze. It felt like a breath of fresh air going through UAB that first season. We made it to the championship game last year, lost at FAU, went to New Orleans, played in the R&L Carriers Bowl down there, and should have beat App State. Played them tough for the first half and then kind of let it get away. But I'm part of a program now that's been 3 years ago, didn't exist, and now it's back. They went 8-5. I think they won 10 or 11 games in 2018 and won the championship in 2018. And then we won, I think, 9 games last year, went to the championship game, lost. This year, we probably returned on our best team that they've had in a long time, probably ever, maybe. And so if we have football,
yeah,
we could be in a good situation. But that's kind of the long haul of the trip. But it's been a ride.
Yeah,
Never thought I'd ever live in Miami or Birmingham, Alabama. So
yeah, an incredible last 5 years for Devon Kleich. That's just incredible. I'd go into mine, but this is not about me. It's about you today, bud. Just incredible that you guys that you have had this unbelievable journey, which still is it's just so cool to hear you tell that story again, because like I said, I was there for the beginning of it. You of course were telling me almost every day about the whole Vikings thing, and then telling me about the Kansas comeback, and then all of a sudden, lo and behold, we can't even get into college football for 2017, and you're already on the road to Miami. And it's like, oh boy. But it's funny that you mentioned that. By the way, before we do, I said this to you before we started recording the podcast. Loving the shirt choice. The shirt choice is excellent.
Husker State games, intern there. I think it was before my last semester in college. We did the State Games America in 2015.
Yeah.
Experience, and I always support my guys wherever they go because they always send me T-shirts. So
there you go. Excellent. So yeah, you mentioned now, of course, you're the head guy for the video department at UAB. And you brought it up, which is kind of leading me into the next topic going forward here with this podcast. Devon Kleich joining us. COVID-19 it's just a like holding the baseball bat, very, very tight grip on the entire country right now. Before we get into discussing football, I guess tell us, how has that been affecting your life? We talked to Doug Lowry 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago maybe, I can't remember, about how that's affecting him at his job in Chicago. How's it affecting you down there in Birmingham, Alabama?
Birmingham and really the entire state of Alabama right now is probably one of the worst states, probably in the top 5 for, just a lot of cases, a lot of deaths, and I know people have their opinions about it, but here in Alabama now we got it's a mandatory mask in the entire state. It was just in our county actually, and now within I think the last 2 weeks or so, it's become the entire state of Alabama. But I think it was back in March. We were one of the lucky schools to get. We got in 6 practices for spring ball. There's some schools that didn't get in any, and especially teams that have switched coaching staffs or just a new defensive coordinator on their staff, and they're implementing a new defense, a new offense, whatever it is. They didn't get those opportunities to kind of teach that offense and teach the defense, whatever they're teaching in the spring. But we got 6 practices, which was nice. Granted, we didn't have any staff changes, so we just kind of hit the ground running. But after that 6th practice, it was a scrimmage. We get into spring break. So we're off spring break. And I came back home, was in Iowa, visiting my parents, and we didn't really know what was going to happen because it was kind of just places were starting to close down. And I got back to Birmingham like the 21st or 22nd of March, and they're like, we're working from home. And it's kind of a weird situation because you think working from home and doing football, how are you going to do that? How are you going to teach kids, offenses and stuff? But Zoom was a big help for that. Coaches picked up Zoom quickly, which technology is not always the easiest thing for coaches.
Yeah.
They picked up quickly. We're able to have some meetings with kids. We did our staff meetings with Zoom. And so we were off from end of March, or basically the middle of March, to June 3rd. We were one of the first staffs to come back and start working. And we've hit the ground running, and we've been back. Everyone's had their coronavirus cases and stuff, but we've been pretty lucky here. And we get to here now where we thought the middle of June everything was going to be A-okay for a football season, and we're sitting in the situation we are now and no one really has an idea. That's the tough part. But for my sake, hasn't affected me any that I know of. I could have been asymptomatic, who knows? But it's been good. It's been good so far. It could have been a lot worse, especially with my job working from home, because trying to get coaches film and stuff to watch while they're at their house. I'd have to go up to the office every once in a while to download some stuff, but most of the stuff I can literally log in here from my computer at home, download it, they're good to go, and then they can go home and watch their stuff. So I didn't have to leave my house too much.
There you go. So with the virus, obviously, where we are once again right now, you mentioned, we're all trying to figure out if there's going to be a football season. Of course, Nebraska, you follow that and everything going on with the Big Ten and how the Huskers completely wiped out the non-conference schedule. What is that like for a team like University of Alabama Birmingham, where they rely not, I wouldn't say all of it, but a lot of the reliance in terms of a schedule is on, the top, the Power 5 conferences. How are things going about that with the scheduling and the mixing in the virus and all of that?
Yeah, it's been interesting because so far we haven't had anything confirmed that we're not playing non-conference games. Obviously, ACC still has to make a decision. We actually play Miami this year down in Miami. Now, if they come out next week and are like, hey, we're not playing conference games, then there's a potential for us, as long as our conference doesn't make a decision to not play a non-conference game, which I don't know if they would, but we could schedule like a in-state team. Like I think Troy would be an option. Samford would be another option if that's a possibility. Obviously, I have no pull over any of that. That's up to the coaches and the ADs. But otherwise, it'd just be, we're playing a conference schedule, if enough games get canceled. We did have one conference. We played one FCS school this year. The SWAC canceled their game. And Alabama A&M is in that conference. And there hasn't been a confirmation that we're not playing them, but they did decide to not play this season. So we could lose that game. So if the ACC makes a decision, we could be down to 10 games. We could be up to 12 if we find an opponent. It just depends. So it's an interesting thing because no one really knows what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks. Because it's based on the conferences. The conferences kind of make that decision, and FBS and the Power 5 kind of runs the whole thing, and then for the Power 5 schools they just kind of fall in place. But like for us, we play Miami. That's a money game. To make some money, you'll go there, play them, and they'll pay you, how many ever dollars. Like I know some of those games get up to $1 million or over $1 million to go there and play those schools. And that's a lot of money for a small school to lose. So, I don't know how that process is going to go if we lose out on a game like that. If we're going to get that money, if they're going to say, no, we're not doing that. Or if every team goes, we're not playing conference games, so we're not playing at all. There's no football season. It's going to be difficult to get that money, I think. I don't know. So
you mentioned Alabama A&M has already – did you say that they've already canceled their season?
I think it was season or I'll have to look it up. I can look it up. It was the SWAC, yeah, because they're an FCS conference.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see here.
Because that's so interesting. Because I've not heard, some of the plans for the non-Power 5 schools and what they're doing and if they're even going to have seasons. But hear that some of them are, or at least maybe one, if not more, are possibly canceling the whole season, then that's eye-opening, I think.
Yeah, so the other day the SWAC released a thing saying that their conference has canceled the 2020 football season and all fall sports, moves competition to the spring. So they might play in the spring as of right now, potentially, but for the fall, it's completely canceled.
Wow.
So
I somehow missed that one when that came out. Wow.
So the SWAC is, and they're one of, I think, quite a few FCS conferences to do that already, because like the Ivy League, which is technically FCS, has canceled.
Right. That I remember.
I think like the Colonial has canceled. So a lot of those FCS conferences are canceling, but they are allowing, I think, some of those schools to go like independent basically and make their own schedule and play a schedule against whoever wants to play.
That's interesting.
So, who knows what's going to happen. It's just you could throw someone out of a boat, land in water, but who knows where they're going to land. It's crazy.
Exactly. Yeah. That's where we're at.
Yeah, and for I'm the last person to ever find out anything because video guy doesn't need to know much. All he needs to know is if we're playing someone else.
Yes.
You get that film in, okay?
Yeah. There you go. It works out that way. Oh boy. Devon Kleich joining us. The second video delay of game video podcast going on. Speaking of the virus, continuing that, of course, something that's still going on, Major League Baseball happening right now. Before we get into the current times, I want to once again go back into the past a little bit. And I think you know where I'm going with this one, buddy. 2016, speaking of that year, what a fine year that was. I wonder what possibly could have happened in 2016 that would have made that year just so good.
Tell you what, that year, some people came out of the woodworks, okay?
They did. There's no doubt. I don't know which Cubs fan I was talking to about that. I'm sure Michael Snow was probably saying it too. But yes, the Cubs fans, the true Cubs fans like myself, my family, were joined by the bandwagoners, and the bandwagons were numerous. Numerous. We thought the bandwagoners for the Royals were just all over the place in 2014, 2015, whenever. 2014. That was nothing compared to 2016. But I enjoyed it. I thought it was just outstanding. Greatest Game 7 of a World Series in Major League Baseball's history, hands down. You can't argue that.
Maybe what? Maybe in Cubs history.
No.
Been like 108 years, okay?
Yeah, well, that's what added to it. You have the two teams with the longest droughts in Major League Baseball history squaring off, and then it goes into extra innings with a rain delay. Greatest game ever in World Series history.
Funny that you brought that up. I was hoping you'd bring up the Cubs when we talked today because I actually thought of you the other day. We were talking. So if you've watched some baseball lately that's been going on, like all the exhibition stuff, some teams have been putting those cardboard cutouts.
Yes.
So apparently one of the guys that works with me, he grew up a big White Sox fan. And I think the White Sox are doing that as well.
Yeah.
And he purchased one and, put it out in the seat wherever. And he said Chicago. And I'm like, Chicago? I'm like, please say it's not the Cubs. Please say it's not the Cubs. And he's like, God, no. He goes, I'm a Cubs fan. And I'm like, thank God. We got too many of those Cubs fans in my life. I gotta get rid of some of them.
Oh my goodness! I thought you were going to ask me if I made a cardboard cutout and sent it to Wrigley Field. I did not. It's kind of pricey.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. So I don't even know if they did them or not. But no, I did not do it. I think it's just another added feature that you have to get creative right now, and you know that yourself with having to lead the UAB video, the football video side of things, and you just have to think outside the box. And we have been forced to think outside the box since March when the NBA shut it down. It's just been crazy to try and navigate this whole thing. But here we are. I think we have, for those who work in broadcasting like you and I feel like we have really done very well in getting around the challenges that we face with this virus, whether it's working from home on your end. I'm not working from home. I'm still going into the TV station every single day.
Who's got to produce the show?
Exactly. That's the thing. We haven't figured out necessarily how to be able to produce from home. And honestly, I'm okay with that because it's just, especially for my job, I'm by myself for like a 3-4 hour period at night.
Mhm.
So that just, you can't really necessarily change that and recreate the working environment that I have at home. It's quite frankly almost impossible. So it's so interesting though that Major League Baseball has, they've done all of these things. They're working hard to, hold this 60-game season. And I've been against it, Devin. I've been against it. I don't know if you've been listening to the podcast or not. I've been against it for the longest time, and I still am. But now I'm just kind of like, all right, they're playing the games. It's opening weekend. They're playing, and it's just kind of we've kind of disregarded the fact that people within Major League Baseball have tested positive for the virus.
Yeah.
But here we are.
Yeah, we were talking. I was talking with someone the other day, and we were talking about, out of all these leagues that are starting back up, who has the least chance to be successful? And everyone was saying the NBA. I think the NBA will be the most successful. I mean, so far, knock on wood, but they've had no confirmed cases inside the bubble. Everything's been outside the bubble. People that haven't showed up yet. They've had a few issues, with people, leaving the campus and then they have to quarantine for 10 days. But I don't think it's been that big of an issue in the grand scheme of things. But like baseball, you're traveling, you're flying, whatever it is. I mean, you're playing closer. You're playing your division, and then you're playing, like the AL East is playing the NL East, which is still geographically close for them for the most part. But I think baseball, and you've seen it already. I was watching the Yankees game last night, and I think it was Soto for the Nationals had got coronavirus, and now he had to sit out for, however long. I don't know if he had symptoms or anything, but that's going to be a common thing, I think, with baseball because, you see guys that are, out there wearing masks and trying to protect themselves, but there's some guys that aren't. And as much as they try to take away from the, spitting and, high-fiving and touching and all that stuff, that some of that stuff's going to happen. It's a natural thing about baseball.
Oh yeah, we've already been seeing it in exhibition in all the games leading up to right now. Yeah.
People are going to high five. People are going to spit seeds. You can only take so many measures, but stuff is going to happen that is going to cause coronavirus outbreaks, and hopefully they can catch it and limit it before it happens. But those teams are around each other all the time. So now the thing is are people going to, lie about, hey, this guy got coronavirus, but you're supposed to check all the people that he was around, if he had contact with those people, and for how long did he have contact with those people? Are you going to lie about that and say that those guys didn't have contact? Or are you going to test them, and then if they're good to go? I just don't know what they're going to do because it's just a tough situation. And this is, this is going to be the tough part about college football.
Mm-hmm.
It's close contact all the time. And people say it right, like college football, like those aren't professional athletes. They're not paid. And how are those guys, do you expect those guys to just go through this whole thing and be okay with it? Like they're basically, in the grand scheme of things, they're kind of just forced to do it because of money. How do you expect them to sit through a season? And I know some schools have allowed, like, I think there have been a few. I think the SEC has allowed players to sit out if they're worried and not affect their scholarship or their standing on the team. So that's kind of nice to allow those players that are really worried about it, or especially players that, have medical issues, sickle cell, something that could, flare up or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
coronavirus and cause more issues, more health issues. That's the kind of stuff you don't want to see, because that'll be the end all for a lot of sports. If someone gets severely sick and, God forbid, die, that's going to be the end all for a sport or a team or whatever. It's a tough situation to kind of think about. And I understand why it's taken so long for, some sports to make that decision, because it's not an easy one,
No, it's not.
If you're a professional athlete, you have the right to make that decision, because you're making that money. You can make that money, and you can, say, I'm willing to take that risk. But then when you get down to the college level, where you're seeing a lot of sports canceled, how tough is it going to be to force kids that aren't getting paid to do that? It's going to be interesting to see how fall sports happen in college football compared to what is happening right now in MLB and the NBA and soon the NHL.
Yeah, and we're just over a month away from football getting started. The preseason for the NFL has been canceled. It's just crazy to think that we are that far out and that we are where we are right now, because I mean, you see as much as I see what's going on right now, and everything has just shot back up. Mandatory masked mandate down there in Alabama. We have the same thing here just for Lincoln right now, but it's not gone away, and it just doesn't disappear. And that's the thing I don't think that nobody understands. It's that business desire versus reality of a disease. And this is what's happening, and neither side is giving up. We know the virus is not, the virus is not a human being where it's just going to give up and everything's just going to slowly back away and disappear. It's going to keep on going, and businesses that need to and want to continue to make money, it's just going to happen like that. So that's where I don't know. I at this point, I feel like ever since I started up Delay of Game again, this virus has been the central focus of of each show and each podcast, and talking about how this is affected and this sport has come back, and I don't know how much of the PGA you follow, where I do quite a bit, but that I think is the sport that stands to see the most success in continuing during the pandemic.
I agree. Yeah, that. I mean, when I was talking about the sport that's most likely to succeed, I was talking about the ones that are starting up.
Oh yeah.
MLB, NBA, NHL. But you're right, golf. It's so easy to distance yourself from everyone else in golf. It's you and your caddy. They don't have any fans out there right now. It's going to be super easy to play golf. And I know they've had maybe one or two golfers, test positive for coronavirus, but it's easy to just remove that guy from the situation and let everyone play golf, because you can distance yourself pretty well in golf, but at the same time, you're going to still have those situations and the biggest thing for a lot of people is, and you see this like guys in the NBA, they've opted out. Guys in Major League Baseball have opted out. They're just, their family at this time is more important than them playing, because you have a lot of, guys that have children that have an illness that they don't want to contract while they're playing sports and then bring it back home, or, you're stuck in the bubble for, 3 months, 4 months, and don't get to see your family because they can't come, And so sometimes for those players, it's just easier to make that decision and just opt out. And you can't fault them for not, making that decision to opt out. So.
You mentioned the NBA, and I talked to Doug Lowry 2 weeks ago about this. I want to get your thoughts as well, or I guess tell me where were you when the NBA, literally in the middle of, I still can't remember which game it was. It was in Dallas. I was watching ESPN's coverage. They had the Mavericks game, and
Dallas.
Dallas and who?
Denver.
Oh,
Because-
right.
Because I'm a Nuggets fan.
That's
and I was
right. Yes.
getting ready to – I think it was that game. I was getting ready to watch it, and they are like, yeah, we're not playing. We're done.
No, it was Oklahoma City. They played the Dallas-Denver game.
That's right.
Yeah.
Dallas and Denver were in the middle of their game.
Yep.
Oklahoma was getting ready to start it, I think, against
Utah.
So they're getting ready to start against Utah, and I think Denver and Dallas finished their game.
Yeah, they did.
There's no more games starting tonight, so that's definitely what it was.
Yeah. So I guess tell me your reaction to that, because mine, I categorized that night. I had gotten off work from Panera, and this was before I went to the TV station. So I came home, was eating, I flipped on ESPN, and before that I checked my phone and I was seeing this thing. There was like stuff going on in the NBA. I flipped on ESPN and they're literally doing, like we are right now, dual screens of the game going on and Scott Van Pelt, and it's literally like, I said this to Doug Lowry 2 weeks ago, like the Penn State situation. It was that kind of coverage. It was so gripping and so mesmerizing to watch, because this is literally, we are watching the shutdown of the NBA unfold before our very eyes as this game in Dallas is still going on. We're getting live reaction from Mark Cuban. We're just, it was just crazy to watch. What was it like for you watching that and seeing all of that going on?
The biggest thing for me was, so at that time I was looking to see what the date of that game was. So the last game Denver played was March 11th. So I think that would have been the day that everything was kind of called off. It was either the 11th or 12th. But I was busy with a coaches clinic we had at UAB. And I'm, as soon as I'm done with that coaches clinic, I'm turning on the Nuggets game. I'm going to watch it. And we got finished. I get home and I got the game on, and I hear the announcers start talking about a couple of Utah Jazz players test positive for coronavirus. That game is no longer going to take place. And then I don't know I think it was either the next day or was it that night that they made the announcement that basketball wasn't going to continue?
Yeah, it was that night. It was literally in the middle of the Dallas-Denver game.
And they're talking about it, they're like, yeah, so we're done. Like, the season's over with. And I'm like, what? I'm like, of course, last year I missed out on my chance seeing the Nuggets in the Western Conference Finals. I was in Denver. They only had to win one game. And out of the last two in the semifinals to go, and they lose both games. And I already had tickets to both games that I could have gone to, the first two games. And thankfully I got my money back, but it was an awful experience because I was ready to go to the Western Conference Finals and see the Nuggets play. And then we get to this year, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Another year. Nuggets have a great opportunity. Obviously, they got to go through LeBron and go through the Clippers and Kawhi. I'm like, it's a great opportunity to see them make the playoffs, and we're not going to have it. Like,
Well, we're going to have it, but there's no fans, and it's not going to be like a regular playoff.
It's going to be different. And I thought the same thing about the NHL. When the NHL canceled their season, I was like, man, the Avs are, the number 2 team in the Western Conference right now. They're playing really well. I'm like, this could be the year that they win the whole thing, win the Stanley Cup, and it's not going to happen. And I'm like, are you kidding me? The one year that the Lord has given me the opportunity to see my teams, other than the Broncos, play in a freaking championship game, and it's all gone. Like, I was so distraught about all that happening, and thankfully they've made it through discussions to where that they can continue the season, hopefully safely, because I'm ready. Sports, it's amazing. Without sports, it takes a lot out of just everything. Like, you need baseball in the summer, you need football in the fall, You need basketball in the winter, and just keep cycling. Throw golf in there, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You need all that. And people don't realize how much of an impact sports make on a lot of people's lives. Even if you're not, a follower of all sports, it does impact your life in some way. Because just think about, like, for example, here in Alabama, if the University of Alabama doesn't play football this year, how much is that going to affect the city of Tuscaloosa and the economic impact that it's going to have on that city? And same thing with Lincoln, same thing in Birmingham, same thing everywhere. Like, that's a tough thing to realize that you're going to lose out on. And I think it was Barry Alvarez. I don't know if you read the article he was quoted in on ESPN, where he was talking about what kind of impact it would have if they did not play a season. And it was over $100 million that they would. And even just playing what they're doing now, I think it was like $60 million that they could still miss out on, or that they could miss out on from just playing a conference schedule and not having all those games. And then you think about it, like all those conferences that have a TV deal, all those professional teams that have a TV deal, if you lose out on that, like, that's $50 million. I think it's like 53 in the Big Ten. It's like 47 in the SEC, like 30-something in the ACC. Like, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So bringing these sports back, especially after what happened back in March, is a huge, huge deal for people, all the teams involved. Because if you just cancel sports outright, the impact that will have in the years to come will last a long time. It won't just be a year. It's going to be – and sorry, I kind of went on a tangent there.
No. You're speaking the truth.
That's kind of how it is, and it's a tough thing to watch, especially with I work in one of those sports, and who knows what, if we didn't have college football, what would happen to me? Like, it's just something that you got to kind of think about. But I'm hoping, football's always been my favorite sport. That's why I work.
Yeah.
I'm hoping. I consider myself a very optimistic guy, but over the last few weeks, it's just been tough to stay optimistic. And the thing about it is, it's not stuff that's like really being said. It's stuff that's not being said. It's not really been talked about. They're just kind of waiting and seeing and see how long this is going to take. If, we have to push the season back, whatever it is, it's tough to watch, especially, working in this sport.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a great fear of canceling football, not just college football, canceling the NFL. Like everybody, I'm talking to Kevin Suits all the time about this, and it's just like he is desperately looking forward to high school football like he has never looked forward to before, because he does not believe there will be any sort of a football season. We've already seen the NFL cancel the preseason, the Big Ten cancel non-conference games. It's just like everything is getting pushed back, or, little bits and pieces are getting pulled away. As the virus still continues to trend upward, we're still the skyrocketing cases is not over. Like, we're in the thick of it now. There's no ending it anytime soon. So just to be seeing all of the ramifications that are going on bit by bit with this part 2 of wave 1, as I call it, is just it's indescribable, really.
That's the thing too, is like, there's been talks about, people are making quick advances on, a vaccine for this thing, and they're in the late stages of, trials, testing it on people, and it's tough because I've read some articles on it, and you see like an article that, this is a great thing that we're advancing this quickly. But then I've read an article where it says maybe we're advancing too quickly, and this could be a bad thing because maybe they don't get it right, And so it's kind of a tough thing to watch from, multiple different angles because, as much as I want college football, I don't know for myself, if I were in anyone's shoes, if I could be responsible for, allowing football to go or any sport to go and something severely happened to someone that, like, how do you look a parent in the eye and be like we're sorry, like I don't even know how you would say it because it'd be a tough situation to have to go through for anyone, whether it's a coach, an AD, and the weird thing to me is how, like, the NCAA has kind of just taken a step back from everything and let the conference play it out.
That's right.
Lately, they've kind of given some, some ideas to, testing and all that stuff, but they've kind of left it pretty broad for the conferences to make it more narrow and narrow down what they're actually going to do. And the Big Ten's already come out with a bunch of stuff that I saw with testing and stuff, but and I think I saw one of them was like they're going to, if you test positive with symptoms, you have to like sit out for as long as you have symptoms. So once your symptoms end, so say that's 3 days, you have symptoms on the 3rd day, then you have 14 days after that. So you could sit out 14 days, you could sit out 17 days, you could sit out 25 days, who knows? If you're asymptomatic, then it's obviously less because you're not showing any signs, but you still have to sit out that 14 days. And I think the biggest problem for college football is going to be because of the lack of money that they've had over this 3-month period, 4-month period, is testing players. Because, like, the NFL, I think right now is testing them every day. And I think the NBA is as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like college football. It's expensive to test. How do you expect, an Alabama or Ohio State or a big time school can get away with probably testing them every day or every other day? But how do you expect a smaller school, FCS or smaller FBS school, to go test a kid every day? Or I think it's going to be at least minimum once a week that they need to do it. Like, because you got to test them before a game. And I think it needs to be closer to a game rather than further away. Because I think the NCAA said 72 hours prior to competition. So that would be like Wednesday before Saturday game. But I think they need to test as close as possible. But the thing is, you may not have it now, but tomorrow you could have it,
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of tough to gauge that. But the whole testing thing, I don't think they know. That's the tough part. They just don't know how that testing is going to work because each conference is going to come up with their own set of ideas. And this is how you have to test. So that's why non-conference games might not work, is because the ACC says you have to do this in order to come play us. Well, they're playing a non-conference game against an FCS school, say. Well, how do you expect that FCS school that doesn't have a lot of money to follow your strict guidelines? But they don't have the money to do that. So I think that is part of the reason you're seeing a lot of conferences go to only conference games, because you're just not going to be able to please everyone. But if you do it within your conference and play just conference games, you can make it a uniform thing where everyone has to do it. And you could probably get away with it because most of those teams have money. But when you move further down the ladder, it's going to be a lot tougher.
And the thing, too, is that is kind of one of the biggest factors into this is, and this is what I've talked about multiple times, the biggest issue with all of this testing and stuff is roster size. That's the thing. You don't have, NFL, of course, is a 53-man roster. there's more than that at the college level. They have more players because it's not a set roster. So you have, almost 100 guys, maybe some teams with more, some teams with less, but at least like 70 players who you have to test. Like that's almost insurmountable for some programs.
Because I think the travel roster size depends on your conference. And out of conference, I think there's like a set amount that everyone can take. It's like 80 people that they can take. But you think about it, a place like Nebraska that has probably 150 kids or 140 kids, whatever it is, compared to let's say us here at UAB, I think we are in the 120s. That's 30 less kids, but still 120 is a lot of kids. So how do you to test 100 and some kids every week? That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money being run through a department every week, and who knows? I don't even know how much it costs to get tested, but I'm sure it's not cheap.
Oh yeah, no kidding. Since we're on the subject of the coronavirus with college football, let's talk about Nebraska here. I want to actually, before we get into that, I just want to get your thoughts on everything that has transpired with Nebraska football since we last had you on. Of course, the first year of Mike Riley was when the first version of the Delay of Game podcast was going on. We have obviously, gone our own ways, and now the podcast is back since. We've seen a very interesting last 3-4 years with Nebraska football. Give us your thoughts on everything that has gone on, from the downfall that was during the Mike Riley program to the struggle and the fight that Scott Frost is leading currently for the Huskers, trying to get Nebraska back to what fans grew up and ended up getting during the 90s and during Scott Frost as a quarterback.
Well, I'm going to pick this computer up here and buckle in real quick.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no, it's just obviously my last year at Nebraska was Mike Riley's first year there. And loved Mike Riley, loved when I worked there as a student. He always treated us nice. Great dude. Was he the right guy for Nebraska? He was, personality-wise, right guy for Nebraska. People loved him. He fit in well with the people of Nebraska.
You couldn't hate on him. You couldn't.
As much as we struggled with him as the head coach, you could not hate the guy. Like, you just could not, because he was such a nice guy and he did things the right way. I don't know if it was just the talent that was being recruited there, because we literally went from a 9-win season to winning, 5 games that last year?
4, I think, 4 or 5.
We went 5-7 because we beat UCLA.
Mm-hmm.
I think is what it was. But my whole thing is, and I don't know if we have this on tape from an old Delay of Game when we did this back in the day, but I'm pretty sure, and I know I've said this to some other roommates that I've had, when we hired Mike Riley, I got a text from a roommate of mine who was Ben at the time. You know Ben.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, "Who's Mike Riley?" And I'm like, well, I knew who he was, but I'm like, it seemed like that was kind of like a hire just out of left field. No one expected that.
Yeah.
Be the hire at Nebraska. But when he got hired there, I always thought that going into this that Scott Frost was going to be the guy. I thought they were going to hire him, and he was going to be that guy that year. And I don't think they wanted to because he didn't have that head coaching experience yet. But I said, and I may have said it on the radio, that if Mike Riley does not succeed at Nebraska, the next head coach will be Scott Frost. Guaranteed it will be Scott.
You'll probably have that recording. I've got all the recordings. It's probably somewhere in some show.
So I think, and obviously I was right if I did say that on air, but I knew I had said it to my roommate. The thing about the Mike Riley era at Nebraska was I don't know. It almost feels like a culture change. I think a culture can change badly real quickly rather than a culture change in a good way. It's going to take a lot longer for that to happen. That's the way it always is in college football. And I don't know if it just got that bad. If it was just kind of, I don't even know how to say it, but maybe it kind of like lackadaisical, just very relaxed and just kind of, he was such a nice guy that maybe he didn't get after him like Bo Pelini did. And I remember him, getting after players and stuff, but he wasn't that, iron fist. I think that Pelini was when I was there my first couple of years. And so now Scott Frost is having to come in here. And I thought they would have done better in their second year. I said that after year one. I go, year two will be really good. It was better. It wasn't good. And I think year three is going to be a huge step forward because you look at it and Adrian Martinez took quite a step back last year. And that's just the way it was. Sophomore slump. It happens. I don't want to say that it couldn't get worse, but I hope it doesn't get worse because it was pretty bad for quite a few games last year for him. And you got a guy like Luke McCaffrey coming up that he shined a little bit last year when he played in his few games. And I think he could be one of those guys, and I think he'll play this year. He'll be one of those guys that hand the ball off to throw. He caught passes last year. So
kind of like a Taysom Hill.
Exactly. And I think that's going to push Adrian to be better this year. And I think that Scott Frost has the guys that he wants to. And I read an article, I think it was an article somewhere that they were talking about finally Nebraska starting to recruit big receivers. Because you think about it, for a long time, we did not recruit. We had small guys.
Yeah.
Small guys. We had a Stanley Morgan. I don't know if you could consider Kenny Bell. I mean, he was tall, but
I'd throw him in there, yeah.
Throw him in there. But they're starting to recruit consistently 6'2", 6'3", 6'4" wide receivers, and then you got 6'8" tight ends, 6'7" tight ends, whatever it is. And I think with the change at offensive coordinator this year, that was a great move by Scott Frost. And just if you look at Scott Frost's 2 years at Nebraska, it's been awful. And you can say that. It's been pretty bad. But a lot of people, still hold on to that. Man, we're having our guy from the 90s come in, and he's gonna bring us back to the good old days. And it's not going to be the same. It's just I don't think it's ever going to be the same. But I think that he can get – if the University of Minnesota can have a season like they did this year, Nebraska can get back to playing really good football. If you can recruit at Minnesota, you can definitely recruit at Nebraska. That's my opinion. And Scott Frost – I think it's just taking him longer to get this culture the way he wants it. But I think it's getting there. And that's why the last 2 years have been a struggle. And I think this is going to be a good year for him because they play a very, very tough conference schedule. And now it's all conference. That's all it is. And they're going to probably add in one more game to make it 10 because they already played 9. So I don't know who they'll add in. But they're going to play those 10 games. And those are going to probably be the 10 toughest games they'll ever play in a season. And this could be a year if bowl games happen, which who knows if those will happen. That I think Nebraska gets back to a bowl game. Maybe at a 6-6, maybe a 7-6, hopefully. Maybe at best an 8-win season. just because they have I think it's a let me look up their schedule. I think the back end is a gauntlet with I think it's like Ohio State, Penn State, Iowa, Wisconsin.
And Wisconsin is in there, yeah. But I think this is so funny because I was just remembering this as you were talking about the schedule. For the last 2 years, much like I did with, and you heard it, much like I did with the Cubs, and I said 2016 is going to be the year. 2016 is the year. 2016 is the year. And they did it. Last 2 years, I've been saying 2020 is the year. Nebraska is going to do it. They have the schedule in their favor. Wisconsin, Ohio State, both home games. 2020 is the year. Of course, now nobody predicted the coronavirus to just come in and completely mess everything up. So with that said, I believe, at least I did until the virus came along, that 2020 was the year.
Yeah. See, and I'm looking at the schedule here. So you go last 5 games of the season at Ohio State. At home against Penn State. At Iowa, at Wisconsin, at home against Minnesota. That is a gauntlet in the Big Ten. And the thing you think about is like Nebraska, I think, can compete with all those teams because, granted, Ohio State didn't have Justin Fields 2 years ago, but Nebraska played Ohio State in Columbus to it was like 35-31 or something like.
Yep, they lost by just a few.
And that was Adrian Martinez's freshman year. He played well at Ohio State, and they almost won that game in a season that was just awful for Nebraska. That makes me think that if they get it right, get the offensive line, revamp that defense that lost some interior defensive linemen, they can play pretty good football this year, especially at the beginning of the season here. If you look at it, Purdue, Northwestern, Illinois, Rutgers, you could very much see Nebraska be 4-0 entering that Ohio State game. Or
who knows if that Rutgers game is going to be on that schedule, though. Let's be real about that.
Yeah, I mean, that's very plausible too. So who knows? Because New York's, that New York area is not great when it comes to coronavirus.
No, it wasn't. It looks a lot better nowadays because they got it under control. Same with New Jersey. They got things under control. It's elsewhere that it's like, down in your neck of the woods.
In Alabama, of course.
Yeah.
And then you got to throw one more game in there. Hopefully they throw it in the middle of that gauntlet so they can break it up,
Yeah. Well, I think they would probably throw it towards the beginning of the season because you see it as the schedule as it is right now. They go a whole month without a football game after September 1st. So you have to add something in there for sure, which is what I think they do.
Which is strange for Nebraska because now that, this year, I think it's this year and next year, you're opening up week 1 with a Big Ten opponent, which is unusual in the Big Ten, but they're starting to do it a lot more. And Nebraska next year is, I think it's Illinois, and supposed to be in Ireland. They're supposed to play in Ireland. And who knows if that'll happen, but, you're going to have to throw another opponent in here, and I'm assuming it would be a crossover game with someone from the Big Ten East. And, I mean, you're already playing Rutgers, Ohio State, and Penn State. So that means you have either Maryland, Michigan, or Michigan State.
Or Indiana.
Which I would say all those games, except for maybe Maryland, are going to be tough. Because Maryland is not the best team in the Big Ten.
Still trying to figure it out.
They'll try to figure it out, but it's going to be interesting who they get that 10th game from in the Big Ten because it's loaded this year, and I just don't know who's going to be that opponent and how this season's going to pan out. My thing is, I kind of have that feeling is we may start the season, but we may not. We're probably not going to finish it. That's why
Or the other way around. It might get cut. The beginning cut off, and it's just a shortened, abbreviated season with no bowl games, as you mentioned. That's what everybody's wondering.
Yeah, and then today, I don't know if you saw it, but there is a article written maybe yesterday about the NCAA Board of Governors was going to meet today, and they did. Nothing happened in that meeting, or nothing got resolved in that meeting. But this was the group that basically called off spring and the winter sports, canceled the NCAA tournament, canceled College World Series, all that was canceled.
Mm-hmm.
There were, the way I took the article was the only thing on the agenda was to decide whether or not they were going to allow fall sports championships. And once you take away that, I mean, is it worth playing? You know, and I don't think they can really take away the college football playoff because it's not governed by the NCAA. The college football playoff isn't.
Mm-hmm. The committee, yeah.
It's completely separate from the NCAA. And that's kind of way it seems like the FBS and even just the Power Five has kind of separated themselves from the NCAA over the last so many years or whatever it is. So they can kind of basically do whatever they want. They can play if they want. And I think the big drive behind the Power Five playing is losing out on them TV contracts.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be tough.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Speaking of the sketch – oh, sorry. Were you going to say something else?
I was going to say $50 million at any school, that's a lot of money to lose. Even if you're at a place like Nebraska, that's a lot of money. Like every program bases their budget off of all that money that comes in from the year before. And, you know, how do you base your budget off of we didn't make any money this year.
Yeah.
It's hard to base your budget off that. If you lose out on $50 million that goes towards that budget for the following year.
Yeah. Well, I remember we just did a story at my TV station within this month about the economic impact on Lincoln of no Husker football or even no fans at Memorial Stadium. Now, I'm sure that wouldn't stop people from tailgating or from, doing whatever. We all know the North Bottoms is just going to be filled up anyway if the students are around. So still, it's just going to be such a drastic impact on not just the athletic department, but also on the city of Lincoln itself. And it's I don't know exactly what the numbers are, but they weren't good. I know that. And it's really, really unfortunate to think about how devastating that could be. In terms of a schedule, Devin, I wanted to bring this up because I brought this up to Doug 2 weeks ago. So let's say that, the Big Ten decides, or that, the NCAA decides to, put their foot down, which would be like, whoa, what? And they say everybody's just going to be having like a regional schedule, like teams in Texas would play each other in connecting states like Oklahoma, New Mexico, Arkansas, Louisiana. So I came up with a 10-game schedule for Nebraska. I want to get your thoughts on this. Using the teams that connect to the state of Nebraska and throwing a bone to Minnesota. So Minnesota would be on there. Then it would be South Dakota State, Iowa State, Iowa, Wyoming, Colorado, KU, K-State, Missouri, and Colorado State. And maybe perhaps South Dakota, hashtag go Yotes. I don't know. Your thoughts on that? Doug was immediately against it. He thought it was a cool idea, but just didn't think that it would be attractive enough or something like that. Doug, I apologize if you're watching this far, and I can't remember your words. But what your thoughts, Devin? What do you think of that?
I kind of agree on the side with Doug a little bit in the sense that those smaller games, the South Dakota States, the potentially South Dakota, Colorado State, Wyoming, you think about it, those games in a normal situation are a money game for those small schools.
Mm-hmm.
Nebraska's going to pay them a lot of money to come play them in Lincoln. Would Nebraska do that? To play football, maybe, But in the economic state that we're in right now, I don't see them being like, we're going to go play all these small schools and pay each of them $1 million to come here and play.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have fans in the stands because you're not getting any money out of the fans. Then on top of that, who knows how the TV deal works out, because the TV deal is based on Big Ten games. That's what it's based on. They want those Big Ten games. And even if you go to Wyoming, for example, to play, and I think Nebraska's done that before.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I know when I was in school, we went to Fresno State. Those types of games still, going there and playing, Nebraska pays them. Not as much, but they pay them. Because I know when I was in Miami my first year, we were supposed to go to Arkansas State and play them there. Well, that was the week of the hurricane. And we made the decision as a university to not go because we wanted to be there with our families. It would almost be like we're all just up and going and leaving our families to survive the hurricane. And we didn't really want to do that. And so then it came down to, well, Arkansas State's like, we want to get paid. We want to get our money. And the reason you don't pay them as much is because the fan base, when a team like Miami or a team like Nebraska rolls into town, you're going to get people coming to those games because they want to see the big-time schools come play. So you pay them less, and then they get more money out of fans coming to the games.
Mm-hmm.
Ticket sales and all that stuff. Well, you're going to these, Nebraska's going to Wyoming, and you don't have any fans in the stands still. So they're not getting any money from there. And, Nebraska may be willing to pay them $500,000, but they're not willing to pay them $1 million to go play there to make up for ticket loss. Or, I know it's not $500,000 in ticket sales, but I don't think Nebraska is willing to do that. So I think playing a schedule like that, it would have to be all Power 5 schools,
Mm-hmm.
just for their sake when it comes down to money and schools trying to be more frugal with their money nowadays because of the coronavirus. And so I don't think that schedule works out for Nebraska, nor does it work out for a lot of other teams because the fans play a big part of it. That's the tough part.
Yeah.
And, I think the Big Ten already said too, I think it was like 20% capacity in the stadiums. Now, you think about 20% of 100,000 at the Big House in Michigan,
Mm-hmm.
20,000 fans. But the state of Michigan could be like, well, we're saying a max of 10,000 people. And so that basically overrides what the Big Ten said. Now the state of Michigan could say 30,000 people, but the Big Ten says 20. And so then you got to follow what the Big Ten says because they say you can only have 20,000 fans. Mm-hmm. That's a significant drop. You think about if 10,000 people are allowed to show up to Lincoln on a Saturday for college football.
Oh.
And, 90,000 plus show up every week normally and sell out and it's crazy. Well, now, I don't even want to picture that as a person that grew up watching Nebraska football, because I've seen a lot of games, whether it's on TV, in person, and that is not a scene that I want to see at all when it comes to Nebraska football games. But that's the way that's the kind of the situation we're in, and we're going to see it if college football is played. It's just the way it's going to be. But I do like I am one of those people that is not opposed to conferences now saying we're playing conference games only. Mm-hmm. Now, for the sake of me working at a small school, obviously we want to play those games because we make money off them. But if I'm in the Power 5, keeping it more regional, which the Big Ten, for the most part, is regional unless you have to go across and Nebraska has to play Rutgers. That's, But for the West Division, it's pretty close. You got Wisconsin, You got Illinois, you got Iowa, you got Minnesota, Nebraska, Purdue, I think, right? Is Purdue on our side of the division, I think?
Yes. Weirdly enough, yes, they are.
Indiana's on the other side. That's right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, unless the Big Ten starts adding, Kansas, Kansas State, Oklahoma or something to make it a little bit better. But even then, you're stretching far across. And that's kind of the issue we have at the Conference USA. Our conference stretches from Virginia to, I think, what's the farthest team? El Paso?
Woo. Yeah,
So-
yeah. Yep.
Is how far we stretch. And like for us, we go to Texas basically 2 times a year because this year we're supposed to go to, I believe it's Rice and who else? Rice and we went to North Texas live. Oh, we go to Rice and University of Texas El Paso, so UTEP. And then the next, last year we went to UTSA and North Texas. So we have 2 trips to Texas because they're in our division every year.
Mm-hmm.
So even for us, that's still quite a trip, especially if you got to go all the way to El Paso. So, you think about us, and that was one of the talks too, kind of going off subject here a little bit, that if all these non-conference games get canceled, does like the Sun Belt and Conference USA kind of make a mega conference and play more geographically, like Troy and South Alabama, they're in the Sun Belt, but we don't play them every year. We do actually play South Alabama this year because they're one of our non-conference games, but we don't play them every year. We don't play Troy every year, and they're close to us. So we don't play those teams. We have Alabama State, which is FCS, and Alabama A&M. But how do you make it more geographical? And there was someone had a breakdown. It was like a 2014 conference, and you had, like UAB and Troy and South Alabama, and then a couple of Louisiana schools, and I think Southern Miss.
Mm-hmm.
And you're close, and those are all bus trips for you.
Yeah.
They're not flights, so you're not spending all that money on flights. And I don't know if that'll happen, but it makes sense to make it more geographical because then you can take like teams like App State that's in the Sun Belt. They can play Charlotte, and Liberty would be added to that because they're independent. And you can add what other schools are there I don't even know, but but we're stretched so far that
Mm-hmm.
we have to travel some years. Like I know this year we go to ODU, go to Virginia, which isn't as far for us, but you think about UTEP having to go all the way to ODU, that's a long trip for them.
Yeah.
And that's money that, could be saved if it was more geographical. And the way you scheduled it, it makes sense to have it if you were going to do it geographically, it makes sense to play all those schools in that area. But for Nebraska's sake, it doesn't do them.
Well, I think, if you're keeping it at a Power 5 conference level, okay, so then if we do that, then Nebraska would remove South Dakota State, Wyoming, and Colorado State. You would still have Minnesota, Missouri, K-State, KU, Colorado, Iowa, and Iowa State. So then you would have to replace those 3. So let's then throw in Wisconsin. That's regionally close, good rivalry matchup. And you could then probably after that you're kind of stretching a little bit more because then you have to try and find something that's still regionally close in terms of a bus trip. So then maybe Illinois and dare I say Oklahoma or Oklahoma State.
You could. See, and that's where you're getting a little bit longer than a bus trip.
Mm-hmm.
Even Iowa, that's a ways to bus an entire team.
Yeah.
But Iowa State wouldn't be bad. Minnesota, it's like from where I grew up, it was like 4 hours, 4.5 hours. So from Lincoln, it's probably 6 hours. You could make that trip, but I think our kind of rule that we do in the Conference USA is if it's within, I think it's 3 or 4 hours, or maybe 500 miles, we will bus that trip.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way we kind of base it off of. But like this year, we're stretched so far out that we got to fly to a lot of places. So that's the tough part about Nebraska. It's such a scarce area for Division I, Power 5 programs that you almost have to play those FCS or FBS schools because they're closer to you than other Power 5 schools are.
Mm-hmm.
You're getting stretched out further, and that's kind of the way the Big Ten is. Like, we're good in the West, but you start playing in the East, and you keep going further and further and further, and it just makes it more difficult for you to make a bus trip anywhere. And Nebraska, I would highly doubt makes a bus trip anywhere.
Yeah. Well, you could do it down to Lawrence and Manhattan. Those are not that far away from Lincoln.
We never made a bus trip when I was there, and like even Iowa, we never did. Minnesota, we never did. I'm sure when they were in the Big 12, they made trips, to Lawrence because it's a close trip. K-State's a close trip.
Probably even Missouri too.
Maybe even Missouri, and those are all with a normal situation, I think Nebraska wouldn't even care. They'd probably fly everywhere, just because for the most part that's a drop in the hat for them, But I wouldn't mind, seeing a geographical, because then that throws in some games, Nebraska's missed out on the last few years since leaving the Big 12. I think they've been out of the. It's been 9 years. Is that what it is?
I think it's been.
Or was it? No, it's 10.
Yeah, 2011 was the first season. So this
That's
upcoming.
I graduated high school, which tells me that I've almost been out of school 10 years.
Yeah, you and me both. We're coming up on 10-year high school reunions, yeah, that's scary to think about.
So, it'd be nice to see, Nebraska play, a KU again, who they dominated a lot. Nebraska and Missouri play for the Nebraska-Missouri Bell like they used to. It'd be cool to see those games. And that aspect of your broken down geographical schedule would be cool to see.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it would be ideal for Nebraska to play it that way.
Yeah. It's just tough. It's one of those things where, Husker fans and all of us, we are so desperate to see college football, and we're so desperate to try and make this work and to see this work out, even though we are in a time where we shouldn't be. We should be worrying about combating the virus and keeping players healthy and making sure that they don't die. And yet here we are again. It's that pushback, the unstoppable force meeting the immovable object. It's something we've never seen. Businesses have to keep going, but the virus isn't going to stop. And so we are seeing some incredible things going on right now with everything and everything, Devin.
To kind of go off what you're saying there, like, it's such a different time in the sense that, that people don't think about it. Like, football literally supplies athletic departments, especially smaller athletic departments.
That's right.
For other sports to take place. And that's why you're seeing the Stanfords cut. I don't even know how many. It was 11 sports they cut at Stanford. You're seeing all these sports get dropped down, but you got to stay Division I. I think it was like 16 or 18 sports you got to stay at in that range in order to be Division I. So you can only cut so many. Like a place like here that we're probably, I would say we're a couple sports maybe over that limit. So you can only drop so many sports. So you really need football to happen, to keep that money rolling in, to keep all that so that you can keep this program alive. Because I'll tell you, if college football doesn't happen, there is going to be some programs that don't make it to next year.
Yeah.
Sad, because now you're going to be looking at a lot of players that are going to be looking for a new home, and there's just not enough spots, for those players. And then the other thing was, and we kind of never really talked about this, but a lot of talk is moving the season to the spring. And I honestly would be okay with a spring season,
Mm-hmm.
but I think where people don't like it is because you look at it in the sense you're moving this and you're basically killing the schedule that you have now. Because once you're done with the season, You get into recruiting. Go through recruiting. You got a signing day in December. You go through January, beginning of February, you got another signing day. And then you get into spring ball. Now if you're starting football in, let's say, end of January, beginning of February, you're losing all of that recruiting time. Then you're losing all of spring ball. And then do you turn around right away and play another season? That's going to be the tough part.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You just be like, we're going to play a season, no bowl games, we'll have a national championship. That's it. Who knows? It's a crazy thing to think about. I'd be okay with it. I'm cool with if we had football in the spring, I'd be down for that 100%. But I can see where it becomes an issue. And then you think about it, if basketball season happens, you're running into basketball. You got college baseball starting.
Yeah, you're squashing spring sports by transitioning fall sports and putting that on top of the spring.
Yeah, and you think about it, like being at a smaller school, FBS group of 5 school. You think about it, you get guys in the athletic department that might do multiple positions. They might be SID for football, and then they turn around their SID for baseball. Well, how do you be an SID for 2 sports going on at the same time? Huge sports, or one huge sport, and college baseball I still think is huge because I love college baseball. But how do you balance that where 2 sports are colliding at the same time? And then you got basketball, they're competing for airtime, and it becomes an issue when you cram all those sports into one time period.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Devin, I want to kind of end it on a more positive note, a friendly, competitive note, getting back to Major League Baseball. Those New York Yankees.
Oh, yeah. Chalk it up. It is World Series for the Yankees.
I'll tell you what, you know how much I hate the Yankees. I hate the White Sox more. I have said that. I have, in the last year, it has become the fact, it has gotten to the point where, yeah, I hate the Yankees, but you also got to respect how good they are because it just blows my mind.
And for the longest time, they did not have a great farm system.
Mm-hmm.
They had players just coming through there, and it's pretty good right now. And they have, you got Aaron Judge, you got Gio Urshela, who's last year was batting .318 in his rookie year. Like, you got guys like Luke Voigt, who stepped in at first base when Greg Bird just disappeared.
Yeah, your boy, Greg Bird.
And he's been playing solid. He's another power bat in that lineup. Can hit dingers, and you got Giancarlo Stanton, especially this year. I don't know if you watched that first game. He's thinned down quite a bit, and he looks good. He looks like a good body to him. And I'm telling you, the Dodgers are going to be good, but for some reason they always seem to not win the big one.
Yeah.
And
can't get there.
I think the Yankees are just gonna. I think they're gonna run through the AL East, and they're gonna win the whole thing. It's just gonna be Yankees. I'm calling it right now, even though it's not gonna happen. Yankees Cubs, just so I want it to happen.
I'm so glad you said that because I was just gonna ask you, have the Cubs and the Yankees been dancing around each other to meet in the World Series for the last couple of years since the Cubs won it? And since the Yankees came back with everything that's been going on under Aaron Boone, do you think the Cubs and the Yankees are dancing their way around each other towards meeting up in the World Series? And finally, Ryan and Devin can just do this and beat each other as we watch that happen.
I think if any year for it to happen, it's this year. Play 60 games. The Cubs get hot. They, start winning in they're in the Central, right? NL Central.
Yeah, yep.
Start killing everyone in the NL Central. Beat the Cardinals, Brewers. Just keep running through that division. Because you think about it, 40 of your games are in that division.
Mm-hmm.
40 of them, and then you got 20 against the AL Central. So I think that the old Cubbies, if they're gonna make a run, and they want to get back to winning and playing good baseball, chalk it up a date: Yankees Cubs World Series.
The COVID-19 World Series in 2020, 60 games.
Yankees winning in 4 games.
Oh, God!
4 games.
Oh, man. Ouch.
I was
going hard.
When I was watching baseball last night, the Yankees game, they announced that they're expanding the playoffs. So now the top 2 in each division make the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think it was the top 2 highest teams or best records after all those make it into the playoffs. What do you think of that?
I mean, at this point, like, everything's out the window for a regular Major League Baseball season. I mean, once, like I said, like I have been saying for weeks, once the NBA just stopped everything else was done for, because that's one of the biggest, at the time, the most popular sports going on. You had just finished the NFL. We're like a month after the Super Bowl. And now the most popular sport with a month left in its season just stops everything. And once everybody else stopped, it was over. So now we're just, at this point, I feel the 2020 MLB season was lost. We're just trying to salvage it and see what can come from it. So to answer your question, it's like, okay, I really at this point don't care, because I don't feel like it's a season. They're just putting something together. They're trying to make it happen. And I don't know. I don't want to be one of those people where I'm not going to acknowledge that the season ever took place. And I'm not going to be one of those people. But at the same time, it's also hard for me to be excited about what's going on right now. Yeah, I listened to the Giants on KNBR last night as they got bashed by the Dodgers late. And it was nice. It was great to be able to listen to John Miller and Dave Fleming for the Giants broadcast. But I also know that it's just like, it's not like a regular Major League Baseball season. It's not. It just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like it's supposed to feel, with baseball. You know how that is. And so, God forbid, we might end up seeing that with football coming up here. So I don't know. It's just, I don't know. I can't really describe it, because that's the feeling for me for that.
The crazy thing is, like, we will probably never see anything like this in our lives ever again.
Oh yeah.
And if we do, I mean, hopefully we're prepared for it. But
like, what in the world could possibly top this? I can't think of anything. I can't picture anything at all that could possibly top what we're going through right now.
It's gonna be crazy. Just we'll be telling our grandkids about this one day.
Oh yeah.
You guys didn't live through 2020.
Yeah, y'all had it good.
Okay, we spent 3 months at home. For most of us did, I should say.
Yeah, some maybe more.
Some maybe more. And, and we could be like, could you imagine a season without college football? We didn't have college football.
Yeah.
We had a shortened MLB season.
Yeah.
We picked up the playoffs after the season ending in March in basketball. Like, it's crazy to be able to tell this to grandkids when they're going to be like, how did that happen? We're not going to be – it's nothing like this I don't think will ever happen again. And if it does, whoo, hopefully we're prepared. But I don't know how you could prepare for something like this.
Yeah, no kidding. This is one of those things that just nobody could properly prepare for it in any way, shape, or form. Devon Kleich, everybody, the man, the myth, the legend. He's not on the radio in the dark.
It's true.
He is in his apartment, I'm guessing, with light above him. Devon, my friend, I thank you so much. This was wonderful. Great to talk to you as always. And thanks for agreeing to be guest number 2 of the Delay of Game video podcast version.
I am happy to do it. If you ever need anyone, you know where to get a hold of me.
You and Doug are just talk about doing this. You guys are battling to be on. Maybe we'll have the 3 of you on sometime.
I'll tell you this.
Doing that.
One of these days, if I ever make it back and you're still doing the podcast, it keeps rolling. When I come back to Lincoln, we're going to have to set up a time, and we'll do it in person.
Yes.
We'll have to do it in person because there's nothing like this made me think of like the times that when we were doing Delay of Game on the radio, and I'd be running over from practice over to the journalism college.
Yeah.
Ryan's like, I need my Husker segment right now. And I'm like, I'm hurrying. I'm running. All the way over here. And wasn't in as quite good shape back then. I'm still not great shape. But, I miss those days. Like, back when we did the 45th anniversary show on KRNU. And, those were great times. And that's probably the one thing I miss most about college, other than working for Nebraska football. Like, that was one of the things I missed the most being in college was because I remember the day I started at Nebraska. So I transferred in after 2 years at community college, and I met you in, I think it was like August or September of 2013. And I don't remember if I think it was Wade maybe. He made a mention something to you about Wade Hilligoss mentioned to you that I was interested in sports and they might be a good idea. And then somehow we got connected. I don't know. It was in the journalism college and you're like, hey, you want to come talk sports on the radio and do this? And did it every week, got kicked for a little while.
I knew you were going to bring that up. Oh, yeah.
Because me and Amsley fought way too much on there,
I was just thinking about that photo that as of the 2 of us of the bet that we lost.
We lost to her and Brett.
Yeah, because we said we lost because what school was that?
Oh, we bet on Wofford in the
yes. Because Wofford couldn't hit a 3 to win the game in that one March Madness game, and they couldn't do it, and that's how we lost. We lost the bet because Wofford couldn't do it.
The best part was I bought that Boston Red Sox T-shirt just for that, and then I threw it away. Never wore.
I gave mine to Amsley. I think she still has it.
Nope. The fact that I had to waste my money on that, I had to throw it in the trash. So.
Oh, that's incredible. That is incredible. I still have that photo.
I think Amsley's still the only Astros fan in the state of Nebraska.
Probably. Loud and proud still.
After they got caught cheating, she might not even be. So.
Oh, yes. Oh, man. Yeah, of course, we're bashing on you and the Yankees cheating all the time. And lo and behold, here it comes. The Astros cheated.
I remember I was at a Nebraska baseball game one time, and Amsley, obviously we'd give her a hard time about being an Astros fan. And I saw one guy at the baseball game wearing an Astros hat. And I literally took a picture for Amsley. I go, this might be the only other fan in the state of Nebraska.
That's right. I remember that. Oh, my gosh. Great times. Great times. Miss those days a lot. Oh, boy. Devon Kleich, everybody. Formerly of Delay of Game. We'll still consider him a part of it anyway, even though it's just me now running all these podcasts. But he is the man, the myth, the legend. At the University of Alabama, Birmingham. Devon, I thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you very much. Go Blazers.
There you go. Devon Kleich, everybody. It's Delay of Game, and we will see you next week.